on August 3rd of 2022. I can't believe I just said August 3rd. So that means we're in August. And it's the Dev Talk Show. I'm Chris Gomez here with Rich Ross. Good to see you, Rich.
Hey, good to be back. Thanks. Good to see you too, Chris.
Yeah. And summer is winding down, believe it or not. So
Yes.
that's how fast this year has gone by. Um, but it's great to be back for another episode of the show and just to have a little fun talking about a cool feature and hacking around and trying some stuff and seeing where it takes us. So um, hopefully everything's been all right your way.
It has been. It's been keeping busy, which has been awesome. But yeah, we're just start of our new year here, so we're getting back in the swing of things at work and just getting people back in the office, which is really amazing. It's been a lot of fun doing that and seeing customers and seeing community and hoping to do much more of that over the rest of the year. So
Right, right. Yeah. You know, it's been quite a while since communities got together. In fact, this show has not been. Some folks may not even know that we used to do this show together in one studio, and it's been a while, hasn't it? So,
yeah, I mean, you got to go back and look 2.5 years to that last show we did in March of 2020
right,
to
right,
see. And it's funny because that studio is no longer there anymore. So
yeah, yeah. So there's been pros and cons, I think, to like. There's been some interesting advantages to being to doing this show the way we do it in the remote fashion. I think we can do some interesting technical things, but then
yeah,
at the same time, it was really cool some of the stuff we did before, where you would have a camera on us, like we were sitting at a news desk, so to speak,
hmm
and then you could, there was green behind us, so we could get overlaid over a code window or a browser window or something. So that was kind of neat. And then you had like a camera on you in the producer's chair, so it had that neat producer, chiming in feel.
yes, yeah,
But
we
Dark
come
Elder's
across
here
the
with us saying Happy Wednesday. So
Dark Elder. Happy
good to see
Wednesday.
you, and thanks for. I know we're a little late for those of us for those of you watching live. You already know that we're a little behind, but if you're watching in the future, then for you say, well, the show started and there was a little funky opening, but I usually like to go into the YouTube replay and cut that that rolling opening anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
like
it's funny.
even Chop says, forgot about the news desk already.
Yes, I think this might be no. We did a show on feature management, or maybe that's the last one. Yeah, oh, solving problems with Git. I think that was the last one we did in the office
Okay.
because then everything changed.
Right.
Screen or with the scenes and the screens and all that. But uh, yeah, they were that was the last show.
Wow.
Which seems odd because it's April 29th and there was no way we were in the office that late.
That's
Sorry.
true. That's true. I mean, it couldn't have been, but at the same time, you're saying that the show says April 29th, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I won't try to figure that problem out right now. Instead, why don't we talk about? Let's see. I was going to transition so that there's a nice topic up there. What we're going to talk about tonight, and it's developing with dev containers, right? Which is a feature that lets you set up like this whole development environment, but in a way that we've used this before, and I like it because I feel like it's a way to maybe without quite becoming a pro at Docker, you can still get the benefit of developing in containers. I think that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And there's quite a few number of uses for this, especially when we think about the various languages and the various frameworks that you might want to do development in, whether you're doing classic development like pro development like we do, or if you're doing something in the data analytics space, maybe you don't want to put Python in your machine, and you want to just be able to, get things done, but not have to worry about making sure your machine's up to date and all that. So this gives you an excellent opportunity to do that. Plus, as we, containers are awesome because they can run anywhere, and they should run the same regardless of where they run. So it's one of those things that if you have a definition of how that container runs, the rest of your team can essentially do development the same way. Maybe even starting from some kind of image that lives somewhere that you bring down to your machine to get off and running. So it definitely changes the way you think about development too, I think, right? Where we just go file a new project, in code or .NET new in the command line. It might be a bit of a different way of doing that. So maybe kind of winging how we started because we jumped into this late, but the idea of, let's see if I just open up Visual Studio Code and you let me know when we're good in sharing on your end, Chris.
Yeah, let me get this switched over here. So your screen is up.
Cool. So this is just my instance of Visual Studio Code. And I do have that. I'm going to see if I can get rid of that window because that does. That may help a little bit. Okay. That should be better. That's my little Skype window that I can't get rid of.
And you can control plus that, right?
Should I do it again? Because I did do a couple.
Oh, did you?
That's
So
okay. I can do
I'm
more.
probably, you know what? I'm probably the strangest person when it comes to this. Like when I present or anything, I make stuff like 4,000 point. Maybe I overdo it, but I'm looking at it. I'm just checking it out on another screen here, and like, yeah, okay, I can see it. All right.
There's a good bit of stuff. Yeah, we're gonna need a little bit of space when we do this, but I think we'll be fine. Let's see. So you can see from all the various recent projects there that I've had been trying things out for the last couple of weeks. I've been having a couple of customer conversations where that has been our focus around, and that's fun. Michelle, interesting. Termination can be, huh? Wow.
The terminal just blew up.
Looks it, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's back.
Yeah. It's good that way. It comes back. There we go.
That's on kind of
All
tiny
right.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Oh my posh, which we did a show on.
Yes. Yeah, I gotta redo that. There was something I was going to add to that, and I have it in a note for myself to go back and take a look at adding something into that mix of items in there in Posh. But what I typically, let's just say we go ahead and we do, we have a dev, yeah, we got a space for our dev talk show, and I'm just going to go ahead and say, create a directory called Devcontainer, right? So we'll just keep it nice and simple. So I've got this space. I can go into that. Yep. Now we're there. I can open up code, and yep, we trust the authors because I'm the author. And yeah, so now we've got our instance. We're sitting inside of this folder. We don't have anything else in here. It is just a folder. And Chris, feel free to ask questions, take me in any direction you kind of want. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to basically say, well, I've got this idea for a project, but let's say that I don't have .NET Core on my machine,
Yeah.
or a newer version of .NET Core, let's say. So let's take a look here. I'm going to look at my installed extensions. Containers, right? So there is a collection of essentially there, I think it's just called, yeah, remote development. So this one here, this package, and these are extensions that you can add into Visual Studio Code. This particular one here is around remote development. And while that's general, It gives you essentially, and you can click on this and we'll see. Um, this is an extension pack
Right.
for doing the remote development. It gives you 3 extensions, right? So it's going to give you the WSL extension. It's going to give you, here we go, an SSH extension and a
Yeah.
containers extension. So it gives you the ability to remote connect into those. So if I have, and I have a WSL um, I'm using WSL on my system, I could, from that extension, go ahead and remote connect into my WSL instance running on my machine. Or if I've got a virtual machine up in Azure, let's say that's running Linux, I can SSH into that machine with this particular extension. For this one, and this is what we're going to focus on tonight, is actually using this to remote connect into a container instance. So showing that if you deploy this remote development one, you'll get all of those. The one that we're really focused on for tonight is our remote containers, right? And there's information here that lets you take a Docker container as a full featured development environment. So full disclosure, I am running my configuration here, even though I do have WSL, I am running an instance of Docker Desktop so that I have a location to essentially create my images, create my containers running on my machine. If I didn't have that, then at least the way this base configuration happens, I wouldn't be able to go ahead and spin up these dev containers essentially. Okay, so I've got this here. I'm going to go back to my folders and I'm going to do Control-Shift-P. And what I'm going to do is say, look at all of the remote containers commands that are here. And we've got a bunch of them, right? So we're going to say we can install a Devcontainer CLI, open a folder in a container, attach to a running container. So I've already got one up and running. Open in a container. So if you opened a folder and you've got a definition, you can go ahead and reopen that in the container. We'll show what that looks like in a second. If I remember right now here, see, this is what I get for not doing this so quickly up to the show. Open folder in a container is what we're going to do. So I'm going to click this. If I'm right, no, that's the wrong one. Because we've already got our container here. What I'm trying to do, or what I want to do is remote containers. And what we're doing is going to add a development container configuration files. So let's do that.
Yeah. And this is that dev container. I mean, I guess we're going to see it.
Exactly.
Dev container JSON file.
Yep.
Okay.
And so that's what it's going to do. So it just needs to know what language do we want to use when we're doing our container development. So we talked about this being a .NET application, so we can certainly do C#. But you can see here we have Debian, we have Go with Postgres, we've got Java, all kinds of different base containers out there that we can use. We've got Node with Mongo, Node with Postgres. And I think this, it looks like it gave us all of them, because sometimes it gives you a short set, and then here we can say show them all. In this case, we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to say we want to use .NET. It's going to ask us what version. So we're going to stick with 6. We're going to stick with the latest one. It asks us if we want the LTS, or for Node, if we want the LTS, we wanted to use a different version. So we're going to keep the LTS. And then it's going to say, well, you've got this container environment. It kind of looks empty, although it'll ask you this even if you did have folders to add. But there are a number of things that you can add into the container that you may want to use when you start building your application. So maybe I want to push this .NET application to the Azure. So having the Azure CLI might be kind of important. I might want to have GitHub CLI in there in case I want to interact with GitHub. And then Git probably is a good thing to have inside of there as well. So with those couple of things, I can essentially, what this will do is it will create an image, and it will have those components in the base image. And then when I instantiate my container, every time I instantiate my container based off of that image, I will have those pieces included inside of my container that I'm running on my application.
Yeah, and that's come a long way from the last time I think we did a show on this, where, and I think we're going to see a little bit later, that we we were kind of poking around with building that story manually, and I
Yes.
really love that experience where it's checkbox right inside your editor to at least get you going. That's pretty cool. Like it makes you want to experiment more.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's just a checkbox to include something there, and we'll show, hey, I've got this thing in here, and every time I build a container, it takes me 20 minutes because I was messing around and included this thing that I don't really need. We can talk about how you can get rid of that and where that shows up in the in what's called the dev or the devcontainer.json file. So we'll see that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
so, and you're right, this is much simpler than when we first did it. I think when we first did it, this was around the time it was probably still called um, Visual Studio CodeSpaces or Visual Studio Containers, and we were going out to a GitHub repo and see all the various dev container folders or dev container files and choosing the right one to bring in.
Yep.
In this case, this is all going to happen automatically for us. So we're going to accept this, say okay. Git version, yep, we're going to use the latest. That's fine. And you'll see three things got created really just that quickly. The devcontainer.json, and you'll see that's this folder, this file here, and that is essentially the structure of your container that we're going to go ahead and do our work in. We're not in our container yet. We're still just looking at the file here. So we've got a net. We can change the name of this. So this is our Dev Talk Show container demo, right? This name could be anything, right? Doesn't matter. So we're going to change that. But you see here we have a definition of a build. What this is going to do is it's actually going to build a Docker image for us based off of a Docker file. You see it's also added a Docker file. We'll look at that in a second. But there is also, if we didn't want to do this, I will just comment that out for a second. We could do an image, right? And we could point it to, something on the Microsoft Container Registry. There we go, .NET, TDT, sure, let's do that, right? We're not going to use it. But the idea here is that I could start with a base image that just lives out there somewhere in the from one of the container registries, and I can pull that in, start, and boom, I'm off and running. I don't need to do anything else related to the Docker file specifically. It's an option basically, if however you want to get started, but based on the extension and the way they do it, we're going to go ahead and use the information they gave us. So, and then inside of here, we can do customizations, and specifically, and this particular area is for the tooling that understands what this dev container offers. It will, when it sets up our container and then gets us into our container with our files, it says, well, one of the things that should be in this container, because it's the dev container definition, is I have the ability to run VS Code inside of there, or have my container run inside of VS Code. So I have essentially the ability to include extensions inside of there too, just like you do inside of the version that's running on your desktop. The version that runs inside of your container can also have extensions. So obviously, since I'm doing a C#.NET application, I will have that extension in here. You see this is an array. I can have many different container types. I think I can even do Docker, maybe. There is this Docker extension here. I can have essentially that Docker extension reside inside of that environment. But we'll show something related to that when we actually go ahead and look at this. So we'll leave that. And then these are some of the things that you can do to provide additional bits of functionality and features. So things around forwarding the ports, or being able to set up the certs that might need to run inside of your container. Because if you're doing a .NET web application, you're going to need that cert capability so that you can run your application and not hit the security warnings popping up because you're running HTTPS and it doesn't have a trusted certificate essentially.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Remote environment variables. This is for CodeSpaces. We'll talk about CodeSpaces in a little bit, but it essentially gives you the ability to, much like we're doing here, saying take this folder and run it inside of a container. You can do that with a GitHub repository as well. And they make it just as easy to get up and running and get started because they give you definitions and virtual machines for your code to essentially be able to run up in a browser. And if we have time, we can take a look at that as well. If there's any post create commands, we can do that here. So if we already had a fully running project, we can say once you go ahead and create our container, go ahead and do a .NET restore so we bring all of the stuff down. And we're not going to do that here, but that's something, those kind of commands are things that you could do. So once the container runs, it kind of kicks some things off in the background. And then you'll see here we have a remote username as VS Code, so that we have essentially not running as root, we're running as the VS Code user, and then some features. So remember those checkboxes that we did, this is where those get set. So this is the Azure CLI that we checked off, the GitHub CLI, and then Git, excuse me, the Git feature. If I didn't want to include them here, I could go ahead and change my mind and just say, all right, you're done, and get rid of it. No harm, no foul. It was all part of a checklist to kind of make it easy for you to get this file created. So it's very easy for us to go ahead and edit it as well. And I'm not watching the chat. I'm kind of focused on here. So if there's questions, or Chris, if you got questions, feel free to shout them out.
Yeah. So right now, I mostly just have observations that at how far this has come in terms of like, okay, so sure, here's a dev container that basically says, you know, let's start up .NET Core or a version of .NET. Like I think you picked .NET 6, right?
Yeah.
In a container. Maybe you don't have it on your machine, or even if you do, maybe it's just a clean environment. But there's all these comments here to say like, okay, now you want to get to work, and yeah, so there's a lot of interesting stuff that's happened, you know, since, and I bet you I'd learn a lot just from looking at how they've built this.
Yeah, yeah, and the we can look at if it makes sense. Let's see, is it this one? Let's try that one. Not there. This one. So this is, you know, containers.dev, which has information around development containers, right? So talks about allowing you to use a container as a fully featured development environment. You can see the structure here is similar to what we were just looking at, right? It's our devcontainer.json. And then we can look at the specification, and that's got all of the sections inside of our devcontainer.json, where that devcontainer.json needs to live in order for it to be able to be found and used. So there's a certain order of precedence in which it's going to look for that. We talked a little bit about the orchestration option, so whether we're going to base it off it being an image or a Docker file, or even using a Docker compose-based method for creating our image and ultimately our container. And then there are additional options that we might need depending on the application that we need to have running inside of this container. So if we need environment variables, or if we need to mount a workspace so that we persist files outside of our container, because as we know, containers can come and go, right? We don't expect the contents of the containers to potentially be persistent. If something should happen to that container, we can get rid of it. We can use that base image that we created to reinstantiate that container. But if we were using that to do development, any file changes that we might have made would go away. So mounting an external volume would give us the ability to have files, whether it's code files, data files, whatever it is, persist outside of the container. And when we bring that container back up again, part of our definition says, go get the files that are in this location and give me access to them. And that's what this mounting component does. We can include who the users are. We saw that with the remote user of VS Code. And then obviously there are things that we can hook to from the lifecycle. We saw that with the post create command. But these are some of the other steps when we think of the lifecycle of a container, essentially. These are the other things that we can hook into. And I think that is it. Yep, environment room. So So that is the kind of, the high level structure of that JSON file. And we've gone through and we've started to modify some of those pieces. What we're doing here, there are a number of supporting tools around that, but what we're doing here is really following this one. No, sorry. What we're really following is this one, and that's VS Code Remote Development. So if you go out to Visual Studio Code, Docs Remote, Remote Overview, this is how you can get started. Does everything we've kind of walked through to this point about getting the extension pack installed and starting through some of the tutorials there, which we've kind of done by creating our own dev container essentially. All right. So if we go back to our Visual Studio, or I'm sorry, our VS Code environment, we've got our dev container. Let's take a look at our Docker file, and that's going to be pretty simple because we didn't put too many demands on what goes into our Docker file. So this is, we've got an argument that we defined when we were going through that checklist about having 6.0 bullseye, and I guess Slim was added based off of one of the other choices we took there. But it's coming from essentially a base image that lives in Microsoft's container registry, specifically for .NET, supplying in what variant of that .NET one we want. And then it's going to give us Node inside of that environment as well. So giving us a version of that to run inside there. I guess if, we're spinning up some kind of a a web environment, we would at least have the ability to then kick off a web session inside of there. So okay, so we've got this, but we're not running in a container yet. And we can, two ways that we could get into doing that. You may have saw when I got done doing the, let's see, it was my...
So I think that default file is not installing Node. It will install Node if you change the Node version arg.
Huh.
But it kind of looks to me that it's saying if the Node version is not none, then go ahead and, start doing all this other stuff to install NVM. I mean, maybe Node version, you know what it is? You know what it is? Maybe what it is that they do install Node on here, but they have the Node version manager on here. And so like if you're saying, look, I need Node 16, I need Node 14, I need Node 18, maybe that's how it works. But it doesn't matter. Like, I don't want to get too caught up in that. No, I think it's interesting in that their base model here, they've got these options to kind of help you get going without figuring out whatever it is. There's a lot of people who do .NET development with a Node front end.
Sure.
Or wait,
sure.
Did I say that? I don't know if I said that right. I know there's a lot of people that do .NET development with like a React front end.
Yes, that makes better sense.
So yeah, I'm not sure what I said. Well, you know what? I don't want to dwell on it.
No, although I will say we did make a choice here, right? We did say LTS when we were going through the creation of our dev container. It's probably...
oh, I see. The arg is overridden somewhere else.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. That's cool.
So it's not a none, which is good.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll have something in there. But what I wanted to show is this part, which came up once we got done instantiating that devcontainer.json folder. Visual Studio Code, because it has that remote container extension in there, is looking at the files in there and saying, hey, you've got this file, and I know what that file is, and I know that file can let you run this inside of a container. So do you want to do that? Do you want to go ahead and open it up inside a container? We can. Makes it very easy to go ahead and do that. I'm going to show another way in which we can get to it, and that's this part down here in the lower left-hand corner. And what that is I'll do this. Make that work? Okay, cool. This part here in the corner, which gives us, it's our remote connection access. So if I click this, it's going to bring up some remote connection options. And those are the remote connection options that we got by installing our remote connection extension. So remote WSL, remote SSH, and remote containers. So we're going to basically do with that notification in the bottom corner. So in case you get rid of that notification, You can always get back to reopening your container by hitting the remote connection in the lower left corner, and be able to come into the um, task pane and pick open in container. So we do that. This is going to take a few seconds, because what's going to happen is and we can see what's going to happen by opening up the whoa. Source can't VS Code. That's it. All right, hang on. Let's open it locally. Let's go back. So if you get into an error, hitting open it locally, which is what I just did, is just going to give us that same view that we had. And I think what happened is if I go here and I do contexts. So you can tell we don't rehearse this stuff, folks. We're doing it without a net.
Yeah, that's all right.
So go ahead.
That's okay, because guess what? Someone else is going to set all this stuff up, and they're going to run into the same thing. So,
yeah, one of the extensions that I didn't mention is this Docker extension here. And what that gives you is essentially, as you can see, information about your Docker that you have running in various contexts. In this case, one of those contexts is Azure container instances. So essentially I have a connection to my subscription and an Azure container instance environment up there. That all happens, that's completely separate of what we're doing with the remote connection and the remote development. This is something you get from the Docker extension plugin. So keep those two things separate. But because I had that context set for Docker, that's why I threw my error there. So what I'm going to do is just say, go back and use my local Docker environment. And you see I have a whole bunch of individual containers and images that were essentially visible. And they would be similar to what I would see if I came into here and I ran Docker images, right? So I would see that same collection of images that are waiting to instantiate themselves into containers, as I would see if I was looking at this list up here. Does that make sense?
I think so. Let me think about that real quick. So, you said it complained that we didn't have a storage account flag.
Yes, it complained for that because we were trying to talk to Azure container instances.
Right.
And the storage account flag comes off of, and we're not seeing it here because we switched context, but essentially it comes off of the volumes. And right now, with the way things are in Azure container instances, I can't create a volume against ACI using the Docker plugin.
Right.
It's just a known limitation on it. But it specifically says, hey, I'm trying to run this command docker volume create, and it's saying, well, you never told me what the storage account was, because, well, yeah, that's a property when you run this command, but we don't have access to do that here. So that's why it's erroring out. But what's cool about that, and we can talk about this part of it here, is that when something does fail, when you're trying to build out a container, it will give you all of the steps that it ran. And those are steps that you can repeat and run through yourself, right? Because we're just doing a Docker step here, right? We're doing a Docker version. We're saying, check the Docker's running. We got as far as this volume command where we list them all out and trying to create one. So essentially what it's doing is the same commands that you could run manually. It's just running through them for me when I say, go take this dev container and build a devcontainer.json and build a container for me on my environment.
Okay.
And if I'm going too fast or you've got questions, feel free to slow me down. But what I've done is I've gone and taken the Docker context and switch it. Again, Docker context is also a command that you could do. So that's all that Docker extension pane gives you, is a non-command line way of interacting with it, essentially. But it's all the same commands essentially that are being run there. So we're doing our current one. I'm going to close this log because we don't need it. I'm going to run back to, let's see, this lower left hand to open a remote window. and say reopen our container in, reopen our folder in a container. This time we're going to show the log, and let's set it back. It's still using dev ACI. Hang on. The one with the star is the one that should be your default, so it should be taking that and using that for my context. All right. All right, let's do this. Well, that looks better. Okay. I think both of those contexts much have something to do. Well, they do. One obviously was pointing to a Kubernetes environment. The other was pointing to ACI. So what we did was select our desktop local, our desktop Linux instance. So running against Docker desktop. And you can see it's building in this case it's putting Git inside of here. Did you kind of follow what happened with that last error, Chris?
Not 100%.
Okay. I what it looks like is that I have three contexts for Docker.
Okay.
One of them is local, and that's my desktop Linux one. One of them points to Azure container instances, and I think the other one points to a Kubernetes instance that I was deploying containers to. So two of them were essentially giving me errors and trying to make those work. When I switched back to the one I thought was default, or the one that was local, I had chosen the wrong one. So the desktop Linux is the one for me that is my local instance. So that's what it's doing now. So it's taking a little bit. It's working on installing the Git component into my container.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But you can see all of the steps that it's taken to get here. Again, we see some of the similar ones we saw with the erroring that happened in some of the other contexts. Doing the Docker PS command, looking for my containers that are up and running with some filtering around it based on the labels and the folder location. So returning, kind of specifically the container that we're looking to put our code into. Now, we don't have any code yet, right? All we have is those three items: a folder and two files inside of that folder for the Docker JSON or Devcontainer JSON and the Docker file. So this could take a little bit to build out that thing.
So let's see. You're using this through Docker Desktop, but
Yes.
another way you can use it, because there were three extensions in there, is you could tell it, hey, open this up in WSL. But I still think that by default runs through Docker Desktop, just the Linux container side.
I believe you are right.
Yeah. So, okay. But no, sometimes Docker pull, and you only have to do it once theoretically.
Right. Yes.
Can be the slow part. So, what's interesting
What's that?
is everything that you're doing there, like we're on a Windows machine, right? And so I'm sure like that begs the question, like, hey, what if I develop on Linux? Like, can I use this? And I think the answer is yes, because I have a Linux VM, which where I believe I basically have this working.
Oh, cool.
But
You want to swap?
yeah, so while we're letting your Docker container build up here,
Yeah.
so here's Visual Studio Code, and this is on a Linux VM. This happens to be Linux Mint, but I don't think that matters.
Right.
So let's take a look at what's installed over in extensions.
Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I am, but I'm not sharing it in Skype. So let me do that real quick.
And I'll stop sharing. Oh, there you go. There I am.
Well, yeah, you're there, but I got to get you out of the way. Okay, there we go.
Awesome.
So now you can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here's Visual Studio Code, and I want to see what's installed. So I do have a bunch of Azure extensions installed. I think what I did is I think I installed like the Azure. There's an Azure pack. I don't remember which one it is. But just like you, I went and installed the remote development pack.
Yep.
Okay, and that gave me all this stuff. And then Docker is installed on this VM. So we're talking about nothing more than just, in fact, I think the install may not be here. No, it's not. It was nothing more than just like apt-get install Docker, and then it's not going to work immediately in VS Code, because if you do nothing more than just install Docker, then root, root can use Docker, so you can sudo things, but that's not going to work in Visual Studio Code. So what you basically do is you add, you follow Docker's own instructions. What they have them on their website for what if you want to use Docker with your user and you don't want to have to type sudo all the time.
Yep.
If you follow those instructions, well, Visual Studio Code is running as you, so now this stuff starts working. And I was kind of following along with what you said, and so like when you typed remote containers, there were some different examples, and I don't remember exactly which one you picked of these.
Add development container configuration files.
Okay. So just to show you what I did, I did not go that way. I picked this one, try a development container sample. And so we can look at what's different about it. These development container samples, they're actually sitting on GitHub. They have Docker files in them, devcontainer.jsons. You clone them, they're ready to go. And what I did is I grabbed the Go one.
Okay. I know you liked using or looking at Go.
Mainly what I like doing is saying like I want to know that this isn't installed on the machine.
Yeah.
Because I want to see this work. So just for sake, I just wanted to check it out. So I went ahead and said like, well, so Node's not on this machine, NPM's not on the machine. I can't run Python. I can't run Python 3. It doesn't look like Go's on here. So cool. So this Linux VM doesn't know what any of that is. So that way I know for sure, just for the sake of demonstration, right? I know for sure that this is running in the container. So here's a different VS Code instance. Now we're skipping past the part where I clicked, where this came up when I said, I basically came in here and I said, let's try a development container sample. And then you pick one and it clones it down. And then it starts churning to pull the Docker images.
Right.
That takes a while, and that's why we have. While you were showing the beginning, I let that thing churn. I didn't know how long it was going to take. I said, "Oh, this might take an hour. I don't know," but it's actually done, which is cool. But it wasn't instant. It wasn't instant. So right now, Visual Studio Code is in one of those dev containers with a Go environment. And I've actually already gone ahead and clicked the launch server button. Like, this was all set up for me in the project. There was already, this launch.json just worked. This
Yep.
Docker file just worked. The dev container just worked. And then you've got this really simple project that all it does is nothing more than listen on port 9000. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, I did have to tell it to open a port. So basically, this port 9000 is open from the container out to, this is a virtual machine, so there's a lot of like inception going on here. But
Right.
9000 in the virtual container is locally available in the virtual machine. So how did I do that? Well, in devcontainer.json, this line was commented. Use forward ports to make a list of ports inside the container available locally. I uncommented that and then ran it. And this is now listening on 9000. And if we take a look at the simple, this project doesn't do a whole lot. All it really does is say, okay, if somebody calls in just on index, so just on, just calls our server, then we want to basically we're going to call the handle function to handle it. And I don't really know Go here. Here's the cool part, is the code I think is readable enough. Is handle func is saying, for what pattern, what function do I want? Well, I want this one. And all this one is saying is, well, write a string out. And when you write it out, why don't you use this method in this module, hello? But we're also passing in the response writer. So let's go see what hello's all about. So I go to hello.go, and hello.go says, I'm going to return a string, hello plus alex.name. Now, I'm not 100% sure where Alex comes from.
Right.
I really don't know. But if I go to Firefox right here on the VM, and I just say, hey, localhost 9000, it's working. It's clearly calling this. Now, I can set a breakpoint here, and let's call it again. And I think we're gonna hit the breakpoint.
See what Alex is.
Alex doesn't have a whole lot going on here. It looks like it's null. I don't know how it gets filled. I thought maybe it got filled from a query string.
It's on line 17.
var alex equals user. So what I thought was, well, is this getting filled from like query string or maybe content? I don't know. So just taking a shot in the dark. I thought like, well, could I do something like this? Could I say, to your point, you said it was user. I don't know that I can do this. I don't know that this is enough. To put in a query string, user equals Chris. That's probably not it.
Yeah.
So then I thought, okay, well, what if it's user.name? And I actually don't see any code that seems to be... Oh, that dot's probably a problem.
Oh, sure.
That's going to violate like the double dot rule and not work, I think. So...
Technically, you only have one dot, but it doesn't mean what the dot's supposed to mean.
Oh, wait, I'm on a breakpoint.
Oh.
Yeah. No wonder it stopped. I'm on breakpoints. So, okay. So what I couldn't figure out, though, is when I looked at... And again, I've never looked at this code before. But when I looked at this server code, I said, okay, this server code is just saying call handle. And all handle is doing is calling hello, but it's not sending in the request. Sending in the writer, but not the request. So I'm sitting here thinking, you want to write a string, and hello.hello is writing a welcome string, but like nothing else. There's no other way. How does it get in there?
Right.
So that makes me wonder. Hello.user. I wonder if you can do something like. So here's where I don't know any. I don't know any. Request dot. Do you have request dot query string, or is it out of URL? That kind of looked like there was request dot URL. Anything in here that's good? Oh, hold on. Not sure what that's gonna do for me.
Very.
So what I guess what I was wondering is, I wonder if I could say, well, let's just try this. If I say hello.user, and let's not try to worry about it being from the query string. and I set this. And folks, I've never really tried to write Go before. Now it's complaining at me. It's saying, "Oh, this is undefined. Hello. Oh, okay." So clearly I don't know what I'm doing. But was it hello.user? Is that what it was? And see, I don't know for sure if that's how you pass this in either. I'm just really surprised. Like, what I don't know is how do you get this in here?
Yeah, because
I
it's not
don't.
called anywhere else in the app, right?
Right. Like, can I do something like this? Is that good? No. No. I wonder if the syntax is like this. Maybe I get lucky. Well, I was hoping to see something else, but I guess our larger point, instead of like trying to learn to write this, is that I don't really feel like I did much of anything. I feel like all I did was say, hey, I want a working sample. So, what was it called? It was called remote containers.
Yes.
I just basically said, I want a working sample. Can you go ahead if I say, where was it? Try. Boy, now I can't find it.
I'd get rid of it and look at the last command that you. Oh, interesting. It's not giving you the recently
Oh,
used
you know
command.
what? I wonder if it's because is it because I'm in the container?
Oh, when you created it outside.
So let's close the remote connection. Do I want to save changes? Sure, why not? And so now, like, I'm going to come back to Visual Studio Code, and I can open a folder. Although I don't actually even know if I have to open a folder. I don't know that I have to because we'll worry about that later.
Yeah, I mean, just hit Control Shift P, right?
Right. Well, now I've done it. I don't really need this. What's this? I feel like this Visual Studio Code instance is like... Oh, it's asking me to open the folder. Okay, duh. Let's cancel that. Let's do what you said. Try a development container sample. This time, let's take a different one. Let's take Python. And so I think we should probably head back. Hopefully what you were waiting on is done. But you can see
Yeah.
what happens is it immediately gets to work. It gets to work starting a dev container. And if I click here, I can watch the whole thing happen. Like it's
Yep.
pulling Docker containers, and this takes a while.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
If you
think
haven't
what
done
we'll
it before,
do.
yes.
But the thing, it's kind of magical. Like I don't really feel like I'm doing anything. I'm getting these samples that then I think would allow me to go examine the dev container file, to examine the Docker file, and start thinking about, okay, how do I want mine to work?
Right.
Yeah.
Here's a sample. Yeah. Definitely. Go back to. Cool. Are you sharing my screen again?
I can switch back over to it. I have to stop sharing on Skype.
Oh, and I got to start
and
sharing.
then you start sharing. And we will switch back over to Rich's machine. So that was just a little detour, partially because I was wondering, like, hey, can I do this on a different platform? And it looks like it works. So
Yeah.
switching back over, you are live now. And it looks
Awesome.
like things have changed since we were last here.
A little bit. Yeah. Actually, they have. So if we go back to, I think we were kind of somewhere in getting our Git components in there, but you see all of the other stuff that happened as we got our container loaded and up and running. So the important thing to look at, and I know, I forget where it was that you showed it, Chris, but I typically show this part down here where it says, hey, we're running inside of a dev container, and the dev container has a name, and that name is what we gave it in that JSON folder, in that JSON file.
Right.
So things all kind of match up essentially. So, but as you can tell, we don't have anything in here. It's just our dev container, which is great. We can build other containers. We can modify this folder. If we were to modify, let me bring this down, this particular file, it would ask us if we want to rebuild the container because our definition of what that container is has changed. So that's one of the things that you can do. You can also do extensions, and you can see that we've got locally installed extensions inside of our VS Code instance. Our container has items that are included, right? So we said install the CLI tools in our container. We said install C# inside of our container. If we wanted to include, I don't know, let's see, it's recommending a bunch of things down here. So we have to say we want to install our Kubernetes component. And we install it, and inside of here, it also gave us a YAML as part of the Kubernetes one. But what's cool here is you can see, here we go. We can actually add this to our dev container JSON. So there's a two-step process to get that extension that we've just added here permanently included anytime we instantiate a container off of that image. And one is to add that extension. The second is to actually go ahead and add that to our devcontainer.json file. And if I do that, you will see, gone ahead and add it.
Yeah, so that's cool. So devcontainer.json, besides having some metadata about the environment we want to run, it's also about VS Code itself. So get the extensions you want to use, just automatically launch. Yeah. Okay.
So exactly, those two things are basically connected. But here we don't have anything off and running essentially from a code perspective. But I could go here and say, let's give us a new folder.
Yeah, so unlike my sample, just to maybe level set it while you're typing here, is my sample it's ready-made, it's ready to go. If you use that try a development environment, is they're just basically handing you like you're ready to code. In fact, here's even some sample code, and all you got to do is hit run. What you're saying is I've got my environment, I've got my .NET 6 environment, and now what I'm going to do is you're in the container right now, right? Is you could go to the terminal and use it just like you were in a terminal on any other machine that where you installed this stuff right on the metal. Now instead it's like, well, let's just use the container to do this stuff.
Exactly, because the use case, or kind of, the path in my mind, and this is some of the stuff, the video stuff that I'm working on at work, is I've got a brand new machine.
Yeah, right.
Completely pave it. I'm going to install things that I need on there, but I'm not going to install any of the frameworks.
Yep.
Can I just do my development inside of a container here?
Yeah.
So we know this is running .NET, right? So we do .NET, too many dashes, .NET version. We see what version we're running. If we wanted to go ahead and do .NET new, because I always forget command here, but let's the templates. That's what we want. Okay. .NET.
And so what's interesting is this is really attacking an age-old problem of developer machines. There's two sides to this coin. One of them is brand new paved piece of hardware. There always seems to be like this setup to do in order to catch up to the rest of your team. And now you're kind of saying, like, let's put that aside and have a standard container setup, dev container, plus whatever else is needed, so that we're all using the same exact stuff. That way there's no difference between your development machine and my development machine. And the second problem that I run into sometimes is that your development machine gets kind of long in the tooth, where you've installed, like, everything on it. You've installed everything. Right. Yeah, you've tried all this stuff, and now the conflicts come. Because, oh, hold on, this project, yeah, let me get the code down and let me work with you on that project. But, oh, I didn't realize that and I'm not trying to pick on any technology, but such and such 2.7 doesn't work together with so and so 1.5. Like they just don't, and I don't know that. And by the time I figure it out, it'll be Tuesday. So,
Yeah.
This is a way to kind of say like stake in the sand of here's what your system needs and only what it needs to get working. We can go to work.
Exactly. And the part of the reason why I was looking at this, and awesome example, that's exactly what developers do. The other side of it is, hey, I want to try out this new thing, and I don't want to, because of everything that's on my machine. They're kind of coming at it from oftentimes a naive machine where it's got nothing on it, or worst case, they're trying it. The instructions are from a developer's machine who already has some things on it, and there are some dependencies there that they weren't aware of and aren't documented. So you go and you grab this instructions and you run through it, and you're not getting the same expectation at the end of this, right?
Yeah.
So we can move that into a container. We can at least show that, hey, it kind of runs as everyone would expect.
Right. And so what you've done is you've got your dev container that set up the .NET 6 environment, and you're going to basically do a .NET new. You're going to build something. You're going to get a new project going. And I think it might be interesting to see if we can take this full circle. So go ahead and do what you're doing here. And, while you're getting going, I just want to let people know, if you're watching us live, whether it's on Twitch or YouTube, you can ask us questions in the chat. If you've used this before, let us know. Tell us what you think of it. And if you're watching in the future on a YouTube recording, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're at youtube.com/thedevtalkshow. And what we like to do is we like to take developer topics, and besides just maybe introducing them, we want to try them live and run into all the same problems and all this, but also have all the same solutions that you do. We learn the way you do live, where we just go, let's try this. I mean, we there's no question. I think we don't want to waste everybody's time, so
right.
So you try things out ahead of time. But even tonight, we did everything in Linux off the cuff, just like, let's just see it work. So thanks for joining us. And I think you can say like .NET new.
It's 1-.
1- for minimal. Okay. And you're going to call it TDTS API. Okay, cool. So what we're making is a RESTful API using the minimal APIs framework. You could use whatever you want. It doesn't matter. The point is you've got something now, and that's going to show up for us in a second. I think.
Should be done. I just got to do this. There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Do the refresh, and boom, it's all in there. So we started our project. We put it inside of the source folder, and we've got essentially the files that will that make up our minimal API. So looking at our program, this is what you would typically expect if you were building this out. Let's see what it's asking me. Right.
This is probably. I was wondering if this was the .NET Restore, but maybe not. I feel like that already ran.
Yeah.
Oh, is this, what, is this the launch.json that it's complaining about? So when you say yes, it says like, oh yeah, I'll make a launch.json. I don't know.
Let's see.
It's going to be like, yeah, I'll make you a task.
Oh.
So we've got our bin folder, and then did we get a VS Code folder just now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. I think that's what it did.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Sense. The one thing we need to do here for our dev container, because we don't have it listed, and I know this is what you did on yours, is that we have to uncomment that line, right? So we get the 5,000 and 1,000. Now, when we do that, and I think when we go ahead and save it, I believe we're going to get an error, or not an error, a notice that pops up saying that our container has changed, or our definition has changed.
Oh, yeah, because now in order to actually run this, you're going to need to forward ports just the way I did, right?
Exactly. Now, we can manually go through and do that, right? We've got access to the ports on the container, and so we can define the forward the ports.
Okay, so this is good that you're showing this, because when I didn't show this step, and you do this step, I uncommented and restarted the container, but I think what you're going to show now is is maybe we can do it live, just as if you were running a Docker command to say, okay, the container's already up. Go ahead and forward
Yep.
a port.
Yeah. So help me with the language here, because I wasn't going to do that. I was going to go down into here and say you can go ahead and reload.
Well, let's see if it works. Because
oh, I agree.
Yeah, because if it works, that could be a nice time saver. I mean, so I think you just say 5,000 here.
And local address 5,000. Then we do add a port here.
Yeah. Now this would be the HTTPS port, which you're probably not going to use anyway, because I don't think we've gone through the whole HTTPS setup.
No,
to trust this. Yeah, that's all this. So I wonder if you run this thing.
Yeah. So let's drop terminal, and we've got this one. And we do net run. Can't find a project to run.
You got to get into yeah.
No.
TDTS. It's capital T. Yep. There you go.
Always gets me. All right. So there's that. If I do the same thing, boom. Cool.
Yeah. If that forwards the port and you can at least run the app. Oh, it blew up. Didn't like us.
What didn't Kestrel like?
Oh, it couldn't configure the HTTPS endpoint.
We should be able to specify that in the launch, whether we use HTTPS. Or is this a TLS 1.
I want to say that there's something in the program CS that redirects everything to HTTPS. Yeah, see that app use HTTPS redirection? It's on line 17. So if we want to shut this off just for tonight, which, let me tell you, do this when you're messing around.
Right.
But I'm serious about this. I really do strongly believe this. Is like from day one, when you get a project together as a team, find a way to be HTTPS as a developer. Find a way to do it. And just live in that world from day one.
Yep, I agree. This is never going into production, so we're going to go ahead. We're okay doing this.
Yeah. It's not even going into source control, really. So, but even if it were, I mean, I'm not saying it's a security risk to develop this way, but the problem is that then you do try to go to staging or production, and you haven't been living in the HTTPS world.
Yeah.
So nothing works.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Good point. Let's do this. Come on.
All right. So now let's see if we run it. It should build for us, right? Yep. And maybe we can get Kestrel to say, go ahead and say, all right. Oh, maybe not. Now what?
Line 38.
Oh, there was more. No, there wasn't. Let's see. You saved it.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to do a .NET build, because I thought .NET Run would do that.
Well, I'm game for it.
Okay.
I'll build, no warnings. Okay.
I mean, if it doesn't work, I guess you could try generating a developer cert, but I just...
Well, I mean, where else would it, if we get rid of this, right?
Yeah. Not the Swagger stuff, I don't think. Maybe, but I don't think so. What about what's in app settings development JSON? Uh-oh.
What?
Oh, nothing. That was just my machine. For a second there, I thought it was the stream, but it was just my machine. My Linux VM went to sleep, and so my monitor went to sleep for a second. I was like, no, the whole stream went away, everything. I was kind of hoping we could just see this work, right? But of course, it's fighting us. So you could try running the
command.
Yeah, you could try running it.
Okay.
I didn't think
it will give me issues.
Yeah.
Because even though it does say this, it will.
Yeah, I know.
Has issues, but we'll try it. Paste. a valid HTTPS
Well, see.
sync. Okay.
Okay.
And then this. So uncomment these remote environment lines.
Oh yeah. So we might have to restart the container. I was hoping. That's okay.
Yeah, okay, there we go. And that's
That's
oh
okay.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Oh, we should do this too. All right. Okay.
All right. So restarting a container. That's what we're gonna see next.
Yeah. Darn it. Okay.
That's all right. Maybe we'll figure it out another time.
Yep. If you didn't have to mess with any of the dev container JSON, we'd have been home free. So we just click this. Let's see, editing, and then it's going to say rebuild your container, which is what we're going to do here. So let's do
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Now, if we figure out, let's see how long this takes. I just happened to be looking at my Linux VM and the Python stuff when I did VS Code try Python, like that came up. That's work. So once again, an environment I don't have on that machine, and a Python app is up and running, and it looks like a pretty straight. It looks like a Flask app. I'm just looking at it. I know you can't see it if you're watching because I don't think we're going to switch over to it. So
It's up to you.
no. I think you're ready. So the build step took a while, but now
Yes.
your workflow, it was much cleaner. So we probably didn't have to be afraid of that restart too much.
Yeah, I think so. I think
That was pretty quick. Now let's just see. Let's see what happens. Let's go, Kestrel. Don't let us down. No.
different error.
Wow. We got a good one now.
Yeah. Bio new file, no such file.
Not able to find an HTTPS cert, so it blew up.
That's what it looks like. Oh, wait a minute. We need to do all three? To reuse your local HTTPS dev cert.
But that's to reuse it, though. That's to reuse it. That makes it sound to me like I could start up and not worry about this, but clearly that's not the case. See, what it's complaining about is it says, hey, I didn't find an ASP.NET app.pfx where you told me to a little bit earlier. But see, we're not doing any of this. Like, we don't really want to export it. We just want it to work.
Right. Well, let's see, because we missed this line here. It's like 3 steps. If I read this, read this right? So it's run the command, uncomment, and if we're remote container, so let's uncomment that. So it says it goes really quickly. Let's rebuild our container. So we've got here, let's do no such file. Darn it. No real help inside of there either.
I feel like that whole section is talking about if you want to if you want to export a certificate and use it over and over and over, like maybe I don't know. I'm trying to think. I shouldn't say that that's not a real situation, but I feel like that's what that was all about, and maybe not what we're after here. But definitely Kestrel is not happy with us. Like we tried to just run it out of the box.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anything in the launch JSON that maybe there was. What about in the launch JSON?
That's where we are here.
But you were saying .NET Run instead of launch JSON.
Yeah.
So
What else
what if you click on the debug on the left, the little bug in the menu, and then click this thing? I wonder if we get a little help here, because the launch JSON is kind of configured more correctly for what we need, but it still blew up because what is it that we've done to make it think?
It's trying to find the certificate.
Yeah.
No such file. What did we tell it? Oh,
because we've changed some of those things. So maybe comment that back out, which I think you should be able to do pretty quickly. So if you highlight, or at least partially highlight, lines 40 through 43, Control K, Control C?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Maybe you did it earlier.
Well, that's how I did the uncommit.
Okay,
I did
Control C, Control KU. Okay, so folks watching at home, that's a chord, right? You do Control K, you keep holding Control, then you switch over to C, and you can quickly comment lines. And it works in a lot of different. It doesn't have to be like a specific language.
Definitely.
So let's see now, and then you're going to want to get rid of that mounts thing, I think, too. Oh, actually, that's interesting. Yeah. I don't think we want that. I don't think we want this.
I agree. Let's get it back to.
We've probably talked about that chord on this show before, so, or maybe who knows how long we've known it. But so we're going to restart the container again, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. Restart the container.
Which was click down, or one way to do it is click on the little green down on the left, and when you get the options up there, you say rebuild container. Does it pretty quickly, and boom, here we are. So boom was a like a slightly longer boom, but it was still good. It's still pretty good.
All right. Well, we don't need. To your point, we can do this. Let's make it easier.
I hope this changes something. I'm not sure that it will.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, it still gets upset. Unable to configure HTTPS endpoint. Now, I don't know for sure if we can say .NET Dev certs HTTPS and that works. I don't know if it does. Because for Linux,
it's different.
Do something else. But
well, that's what this was.
Yeah, I know. That's what all this stuff was. I know.
But we told it, although it should have put it there, right? If we say trust, if we ran this command, does it put it there, or is it expecting it to be there?
If you run the first one, what does it do? If you just run the .NET Dev Search Trust.
The one on 35?
On 37.
Okay.
So, but only up to the semicolon, basically.
I
mean, I guess it doesn't matter because they're exactly the same, but.
Okay. Well, dash.
Okay, well, maybe. Let's try running it now. Like hit the washing machine green washing machine. It's not really a washing machine, but the restart.
Recycle.
Yeah, that's some old inside jokes from, oh man, Azure DevOps, when I was it Azure
Yes.
DevOps where I kept
The washing machine.
calling it the washing machine.
All right.
But yeah, look at this. It's I think it's going right, because or no.
So why did it run
Well, first of all, you
70?
don't want 7,085, right?
Yeah.
So 5,001 for HTTPS, I think.
Right, but 5,000 should work too, right?
Yeah, except that
Oh,
you
I'm
asked.
sorry.
Except you
I-
asked for
I did.
HTTPS.
Yep. Good point.
Now, are you on a breakpoint? I don't
No,
think
we
you
didn't-
are.
We didn't break anything.
Yeah, I don't think you are. And we're running. Oh, your application running on port 5233 is available. Oh, really? That's not. Wait a second. That doesn't make sense. Does it?
Yeah, I told it what port.
I know. Okay, so what is... We ran it, right? And,
Yeah.
And what do we see in... Well, look at that. Interesting. It did auto forward 5233. Look at that. But 7085 is the HTTPS version, maybe? No.
Oh, wait a minute. Isn't this is a web API?
Oh,
So don't I need?
you gotta call something? Sure.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't remember what the different... We didn't even look at the code to see what the minimal API set up.
Yeah.
Weather forecast.
There we. Yep. This one. Good catch. And there should be a Swagger call as well, right?
Yeah, I think so, because we saw it say Swagger. Oh, look at that.
Hey, there we go.
So this is running.
Yep.
523 is being forwarded, and what was really interesting there is when the project started, it auto-forwarded, which makes me wonder, is there something sitting either in the devcontainer.json or in the tasks file? Because, yeah, that was interesting. That forward ports thing was there, but is there something sitting in the launch.json that's auto-forwarding for us? Maybe not. Maybe not. I just thought it was really interesting that when you started it, all of a sudden we've got 2 more auto-forwarded ports from... I bet you we can figure that out. But the key is that API is working. We were just trying to hit localhost, thinking it was like a web page. It wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It was waiting for somebody to call it on weather forecast or something like that. So...
I mean, we could put a mapping in there, right? If you put / it gets you somewhere, right?
Yeah. So that worked.
Okay. Cool.
And here's what
So-
was cool about that. So you used you kind of went through the I don't want to call it the help, but the Control Shift P, create a new project, and you said, I want .NET 6, I want the GitHub CLI, I want the Azure CLI, and it kind of built you a custom container for that.
Yeah.
And then you were able to say .NET new, start a new project. The interesting thing here is, I think if you were to put all this up in GitHub, then I would be able to bring it down and just open it right up in VS Code and go to work.
Yeah.
Now I'd have to pull all the stuff, right? It would want to pull all the containers and everything, but that's kind of the coming full circle end result of all this is that, like, if folks have been with us, if you've stuck with us for the last little bit over an hour, you've seen us do this, and it's like, well, to what purpose? And the purpose is well, now all Rich has to do is commit this to some source control, and the key is the Docker file and the devcontainer.json. Those are the keys that let Visual Studio Code, if I have those remote extensions installed on Linux even,
Yeah.
on a Linux machine, you're on Windows, I'm on Linux, who cares? Then VS Code is smart enough to say, okay, let me use your local Docker, build the same environment, and boom, you're off and running.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
And we've got to do that. We've got to do that at the right level, right? If you think about the structure of this repository, we've got workspaces dev container, which really is the folder where we would have to go ahead and tell Git to create. We need to do it here because if we look at this one, see, we'd have to come outside of the container because we need to also get the dev container folder, which we won't be able to see inside the container. Does that make sense? So we look at, let's go to here. Clear this out. Right, so we've got, this is what is in our folder, or this is what's in the area that I created when we started tonight called dev container. Sorry, it's a little bit redundant naming because what happened was when we said go add configuration files for a container, it gave me you can't hear me. Oh no. I think you're still hearing me on the stream. Interesting. Even though I can't confirm that because I don't have audio to the stream. Shoot me a note in Skype. Should I just keep talking? Because I can talk. You know me, I can talk. We can kind of just talk through those pieces there. Because if you think you're hearing me, I'll keep talking. Chris is doing a little bit of troubleshooting behind the scenes, and we're waiting for him to kind of come back and let us know what he is seeing there. Let's see. Oh, definitely hearing me on the stream. That is awesome. That's a good thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going. I just want to drop something in here. Let's do that. So if I go to, so let's try this again. So in this space where we are, when we started tonight, we said create a folder on our local system called dev container. When we did that, we jumped into VS Code and then said inside of VS Code, thanks to NDI, love it. Love that NDI tool. If you're doing anything with video, I highly recommend go checking out NewTek and their NDI tools. An unsponsored plug. What we're doing here is we're basically saying inside of our dev container, we've got VS Code. It created a dev container folder. And then when we said go ahead and create a .NET project for us, it created those other two components. But inside the container, all we're seeing is that source folder. We're not seeing the VS Code in the dev container. Yes, I know if we drop into here, it exists. We can see it, we can modify it, we can do changes to it, but the folder structure that lives inside of this workspace is only focused on this particular folder here as far as what we can see. So if we want to save this entire component out to a registry, what I would say we would do is we would close the remote connection. What that's going to do is that's going to take us out of the container. We don't have multiple modifying a folder in a container versus not. I'm going to go into my environment here and I'm going to say git init, and now I've initialized a repository for my dev container environment. I can do my git add all my files. I probably should do a git ignore, or should have done a git ignore. We'll clean that up later. Git commit -m. All right, and now we've got all our to git status. Everything's clean, nothing commit, right? So we've got all of our components in there. I could take this package and move that up into a GitHub repository, and that works because of the that dev container folder will be there in GitHub. And if I see if I can do that real quick. Now we're kind of running out of time here. Maybe we do this as the last thing for the evening. So here's me. Here's my GitHub environment. I'm going to go ahead and say, give me, we'll do it from repositories. Give me a new one. Not going to use a template. I'm going to put it under my account. I'm going to say this is TDTS API. No description, that's fine. We'll keep it public. This way you guys can all do the same thing when we're in here. I'm going to create the repository. Chris, send me a note. Let me know if you're trying to reconnect or if we're just going to me closing it out when we're done here. So now I have my mutable API. The code exists on my machine. If I take this and copy it, go back to my machine and paste it. Yeah, paste it anyway. Let's see what can happen. Push origin up to main. Yep. Beautiful. So now we're up on the main environment. Yes, don't commit to main, but this is a demo. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. But what you see, we have our dev container, which is what we wanted. We need that in here. Even though the code is here, we still need our dev container to be included. We've got our VS Code information inside of here. But what's really cool is this part here, CodeSpaces. And we can create a code space on the main environment. I believe if I click this, it's going to say, well, it's going to go ahead and build the container based off of what is in my dev container folder. So if you remember when we looked at the spec and it was saying, well, here's the places that for certain things that are aware of how to process a devcontainer.json, this is where we'll look. Since we've got it in that location, CodeSpace is going to go ahead and get up and running and be able to build out our container. We can view the logs here. This may take a little bit because much like we did when we were running in our local environment, it's got to pull down all the images. It's got to put the Git CLI, the GitHub CLI, all of those components inside of our container image or inside of our container when it deploys it. Now, even though we're doing this in Docker, in GitHub inside of our code spaces, there still is the capability, because it is a container, we can have that container run locally on our machine if we wanted to. But in this case, we're just going to have it run inside of a browser. And we know this is going to take a little bit of time here for it to do this. This is the point where we kind of shifted back over to Chris and looked at his machine. And I'm not watching the stream. I'm just kind of doing. Yep, it looks like. Can't tell if I'm live or not. It looks like you're still seeing. If that makes a difference, that may help. So all you have missed is me moving it up into GitHub. Oh, there's Chris. I'm live. Okay. There we go. So what you're seeing now is the code space that I created inside of my GitHub. It's going to take a few seconds for it to go. Chris seems to be stuck in a perpetual loop in that he can't get his device to come back up. Let me see. I think Chris over on this side for a second. Bear with me. See what he wants to do. But what's happening is, right, essentially we're creating that image just like we did on-prem on my local machine. But because it resides up in GitHub and we're using CodeSpaces, we're able to create a container that will, in this case, not only have the dev container and the Docker file, but it'll also have the code that we've checked in. And we can do exactly what we did on premises and debug, because we're running inside a version of Visual Studio Code. We can debug the environment and basically start a browser and see that same and connect to that same minimal API component.
All right, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, now
I'm
I can
back.
hear you.
Okay, so yeah, that was an adventure where this microphone here, just like the device just went away,
Wow.
and Voicemeeter said, "Oh, the device that you're using went away, so I'm gonna crash."
Okay.
But
Now,
what's cool is you were still transmitting, because remember a couple months ago, I switched away from Voicemeeter pumping this to letting NDI
yeah.
do your audio. Well,
Yep.
thank goodness, because OBS is like, well, I'll just keep going using the Skype audio. No big deal.
I got it. I'll keep running.
Yeah, I'll just keep running. But, I can't hear this other guy. I don't know what happened to him.
Now, do we know, are you coming out on the stream now as well, or are they just hearing me?
Yeah, I'm definitely talking, but I don't have everything set back up yet. I think I need to get, like, for instance, my camera's dead.
Okay.
It may or may not come back.
Okay. We can, I'm at a point where we can kind of wrap this up, because what I've done essentially is I pushed everything up to GitHub. We've got CodeSpaces running. I've instantiated a CodeSpace. We can see, if we look down here in the lower left, I've got, instead of it saying dev container and the name of dev container, it's showing CodeSpaces. So that's awesome. If I go here and I say, let's do a debug.
Yeah, I saw what it looked like. I was trying to watch is that instead of what I was saying, where, hey, why don't you get it up in GitHub and then I'll pull it down? You just said, well, hey, let me get it up to GitHub and then I'll just start a code space.
Yes.
Yeah, and that and I didn't quite notice if you actually started it and ran, or if it has to. Okay, so this stuff has to happen here too.
Yep.
The HTTPS
and it
stuff.
It makes sense. It's a different container.
Right. And all that stuff in the devcontainer.json, I think what that's about is saying, well, if you create a certain, export it, and then maybe include it in the container, then you don't have to do this every time.
Right. So yeah, and it could be a command that runs, and I apologize, it's kind of what you're saying, a command that runs, at the post create command. Exactly.
Right.
Sorry, I was looking at this and thinking.
Okay. No, I know. So I'm trying to think of is the camera going to come back, or is the camera like, that's it? The camera's
you're
like,
frozen.
I'm done. Well, because here's the issue, right? I've got to get oh wait, hold on.
Maybe.
We might. How funny is this? Look at that. I think I'm moving back on stream again, and you might see me again. Yeah.
You're back.
What an adventure. Hopefully we didn't lose a lot of people there. But anyways, thank you, Rich, for keeping that moving. And hopefully that was a good demo. Because that's the circle I wanted to make there was, the point of this was you created a project that the project code is cool and everything, but it's the dev container and the Docker file that are the key. You can get that up to your source control. And if that source control happens to be GitHub, you are in position to just start a code space. But even if it doesn't, maybe it's your own local, it's your works, because sometimes a lot of us at work, we're using our own thing. So that's okay. Bring it down. You've got Docker on your system. Boom. Identical development environment.
Exactly. So let's see. So that opened because we wanted to show this. So that's 7085. We know 7085 isn't going to work, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
5233 was the one that worked?
I think it was 5233.
Boom.
Yeah.
There we
and
go.
Then, isn't it crazy? This is a feature of CodeSpaces that you're kind of showing off here, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Where that URL up there goes out to your CodeSpace, through the tunnel to the Docker container, grabs port 5233, brings it back. So you like, talk about inception. You're you're in a browser, right?
Yeah,
Attached to a code space, and then running the app, and now in your browser you can test your app out, and it's
yeah,
all there.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
So
What I didn't get to show everybody, because I was trying to figure out what was wrong, and I thought to myself, "Hey, I wonder how much of this, how much of this is, like, is my system just overloaded or something?" I didn't see any drop frames, so I wasn't sure. So I shut down the Linux VM, which is a bummer because while you were working, the Python stuff all came up. Like everything that you saw in the audience, if you were watching the recording, or if you want to go back to it, I didn't do anything else other than what you saw. We let it churn a little bit to build the Python container. And then next thing you know, Python comes up. All I got to do is go over to the debugger tab, click run, and bring up just bring up a browser, and the Python sample is a little bit different. The Python sample is a Flask sample, and it says something like, "Hey, VS Code can do that," and but it works.
yeah,
And I'm
that,
so impressed by that stuff.
and that's the best part, right? It's always when you do a sample like that, you want it, especially when it's a quick start one. It should just work, and the
Right.
fact that it's in that container, it's just going to be that much easier to get it up and running. So I know we've kind of wow, we went long. But we started a little late, so it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do have one quick announcement. If you want
Yeah.
to share my screen again,
Yep.
this is coming up, and it's kind of important. Well, we did a couple of .NET MAUI shows, gosh, over the course of the summer, right? I think they may have been a month apart or a couple weeks apart. But if you're interested in .NET MAUI and you're interested in building, cross-platform applications using .NET MAUI, there is a Focus .NET Conf event coming up next week, next Tuesday, August the 9th. And it's a full-day event. There's a full schedule up there as well. This is the blog post, and it's up on devblogs.microsoft.com. But it is talks about a number of not only the conference that will be live streamed starting at 9 a.m. Pacific or 12 out here in the East Coast on the 9th, but also a lot of or some virtual and in-person events. So if you are in Redmond, if you're in San Francisco, if you're in Bengaluru, or a couple different places there, and those might be on different dates. Sorry, I should have pointed those out. Those live events will be on separate dates later on. But the point is, if you're interested in MAUI, .NET MAUI, there's a live event on August 9th. There are in-person events coming up, as well as watch parties. So go ahead out, take advantage of those. Love to, hear you in the comments either here or on those .NET MAUI videos that we did, and hear about your experiences with participating in these events, because there are some really cool presentations and some great tips that come out of those as well.
Cool. Awesome. That's a week from yesterday.
Exactly. Yep.
So next Tuesday. I wish I should have been more prepared. There are some Azure learning opportunities right now that I keep getting in my email box that say things like, attend this session and you can take the certification for free.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they're in the month of August, and I should have had them here. What I think I might do is if you head to the YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, I know this stuff's happening in August 2022, but I'll see if I can get them into the description early tomorrow. But they were interesting things like Azure fundamentals. So I don't know if it's all day. It might have been a half day workshop, and then they say, hey, if you come to this, you can take the cert for free. And they had a few of these opportunities, and they weren't just one of them was like an AI one, and another one was like the data platform. And I should have brought him to the show tonight. And don't ask, when you brought that up, I said like, oh shoot, why didn't I do that? So in any case, great to see you back on the show, Rich.
Great to be back. It's awesome. And I think we've got a few more weeks to get us through the rest of the summer, but
Yep.
I think we've got some sessions lined up as well, which is good too.
Yep. Yep. We're gonna. I think for the next couple weeks we're in pretty good shape. I just got to get up on the meetup. I'd like to get them on the meetup. I feel like that lets people know what we're doing.
Hmm.
And we had a couple shout outs there at the end. You know, that guy Akashi showed up, and thank you so
Oh,
much
cool.
for joining and chatting with us. And then Dark Elder letting us know that you could hear Rich. And then eventually, I know I came back in for a little while. This microphone device sitting in front of me just disappeared, and
Ah,
eventually, when it came back, it really confused Voice Meter. But what a great thing that was that we switched Voice Meter. I don't know when it was, a few months ago. We switched to taking the audio directly from the Skype feed, and that saved us because you could keep going.
Sometimes those decisions pan out in ways that
Yeah,
we don't even realize, right?
yeah, that's right. So
Awesome.
hey, you know, if you made it to the end, thank you. If you joined us late, this recording will be on YouTube, youtube.com/the Dev Talk Show. You know, go head there, subscribe, watch the videos, watch our replays. Otherwise, if you, it's okay to, you know, you can subscribe to us on YouTube and watch us live Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Or we're also over on Twitch Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. And you know, we love the folks that come and join us every week. Thank you so much. It's so great to have your support. Anything you do to share with friends, you know, retweet the Dev Talk Show or anything at all, just to say, hey, you might like watching these folks poke around with technologies. It helps, and we really appreciate it. So
Definitely.
I think that's going to do it, right, Rich?
I think so. That's a show.
Let's see if this magic close the show button works, and if it does, then we will see you next Wednesday, August 10th, 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, right here on the Dev Talk Show.